welcome to the first event of its kind, a report about the state of the community from three of the local public entities: the University of Montana, Missoula County, and the city of Missoula. I'm William Marcus. I am the director of UN's Broadcast Media Center, and I was asked by the participants to be your moderator for this event. Before I begin the program, I'd like to acknowledge the work done by Jenny Merriman of the Mayor's Office, Van Hughes of Missoula County, and Ellen Palmer of the UN President's Office. I'd also like to make it clear that your tax dollars were not spent for this nice setting. I'd like to thank the living room and Office City for their loan. As you came in, you received a couple of items. One was this State of the Community pamphlet and also a 3x5 card on which you can write questions. At any time during this event, just pass those questions down to the end. People will periodically collect them, bring them up here. We also have 2 microphones at each side of the auditorium for your questions as well. And as we get into the program, I will ask you to begin to queue up at the microphones. This is being recorded for NCAT, so it's pretty essential that you go to the microphone to ask your question or people won't hear it. It also gives us the opportunity to interact with you more closely, for you to ask your question right at eye level. And I think that we'd appreciate it if you would do that. I'll remind you periodically about the question cards, because that will help me out, so I'll have more questions to ask. But also, it's your opportunity to participate as well, even if you don't want to go to the microphone. Before I introduce these gentlemen, I want to give you a bit of some background about how long these 3 public entities have been intertwined. In 1893, at the Montana legislature, Missoula County was being carved up. Flathead County was created in the north, where Valley County was being created to the south. At the same time, Mayor Frank Higgins was in Helena leading a citizens group from Missoula, campaigning for Missoula to be the site for the new state university. The support for people from the Valley County area depended on Missoula's support for the creation of the Valley County. There were other things going on with the location of the state capital as well. All of that was going on. Well, the university bill passed in 1893, but the legislature spent all the money before they got to funding the university. So UN had to wait 2 more years to be established. And in 1895, with President Carey at the head, it opened. And I found this quote from the Western Bureau of the Anaconda Standard, which was in Room 6 of the David Law in Missoula, talking about the opening of the University of Montana, October 17, 1895. There ought to be no relaxation of interest on the part of the citizens of Missoula in the university. The University of Montana is destined to be a great school. Its experience for a few years will not be a particularly easy one, but it's clearly the duty of all people of Missoula to lend a hand, to keep things moving as they should in that big brick building across the river. And so they have. Here to report on the latest ways that Missoula County, the city, and the university lend a hand to each other and move forward together are John Engen, Missoula's 50th mayor. He was elected in 2005 and was re-elected on November 3rd, 2009, when he ran unopposed. Before serving as mayor, John served a term as a city council member, was an award-winning writer and editor for the city's daily newspaper, owned and operated his own small business, and volunteered for a variety of Missoula's nonprofit organizations, concentrating on human services. Attending tonight are also members of the Missoula City Council. If you are a council person, would you stand? Carey is chair of the Missoula County Board of County Commissioners. He was elected to his first 6-year term as a commissioner in November of 1998. He was re-elected in 2004 and in 2010. He was the director of the Missoula Food Bank for more than 10 years. And during that time, he also served 2 terms in Montana's House of Representatives. And I believe also that Missoula County's other 2 commissioners, Gene Curtis and Michelle Lanquist, are here. Thank you. The University of Montana's 17th president, Dr. Royce Engstrom, assumed his duties in October of 2010 after serving as provost and vice president for academic affairs for 3 years. He came to Missoula in 2007 from the University of South Dakota, where he served as professor and chair of chemistry, vice president for research and dean of the graduate school, and provost and vice president for academic affairs. The format tonight will have these 3 gentlemen each speak to you a bit about their areas of cooperation. I'll ask a question to each one of them following their presentation. And then we will engage in a series of questions in many ways prompted by what they're going to say. I don't know what they're going to say, and they don't know what I'm going to ask. And again, your questions will feed into that. If you have had time to review this document and have specific questions there, or if you have questions that come from the discussion that happens, please send them forward. And we'll go through those as well. So let's get started. Mr. Carey, I'd like you to begin, please.
Thank you, William. Thank you for turning out tonight. This is an experiment. We hope is successful, and we hope to build on it over the years to come. Before I address the state of the community, I'd like to say a few brief things about your county government. I think it's important for folks to understand that county commissioners are administrators. We don't pass legislation. We don't rule on the law. That's for the legislature and the judiciary. But it's important for folks to know that oftentimes they think we can solve a problem they may have, and they're dismayed to hear us say that that's a legislative matter. So that's the way it is. But your county government, I'm biased, but I think it's very well managed. The staff is terrific. We have 700 employees. We have our own health insurance program, workers' comp, budget of about $97 million a year, 32% of which comes from property taxes. The rest comes from fees, licenses, federal money, and so on. We have a solid financial base. The various funds that we have all have their required reserves. So I'm not bragging, but I think we're in solid shape. An assessment of the community, the state of the community, is a different matter for me. I think that there are some troubling indicators that are still with us, that the economy languishes, people young and old, or young and not so young, can't find work, gainful employment. We have a food bank here in town that continues to serve more and more people. Every year we have a lack of affordable home ownership activities. So the state of the community, and I'm including the folks in Celia Lake and Houston and 9 Mile and Lolo, as well as the city dwellers, the state of the community is somewhat precarious. I'm hopeful, though, because we've got a Missoula Economic Partnership in place now, and I think the mayor addressed that pretty thoroughly. We've got an amazingly talented, well-educated group of citizens here. One of the unfortunate roles that we have to do sometimes is we'll get an opening on a board, and we'll get a half a dozen people apply for it. All of them are overqualified, and so you've got to turn 5 people away. That can be dismaying when it comes to the job. So I'll just say that as far as I'm concerned, the state of the community is in need of improvement, and I think we're taking steps, particularly with things like this, so that we emphasize collaboration, cooperation. I think the more we talk about it, the more we'll do it. So thanks again for coming tonight.
As you said, the county commissioners have no ability to write laws or change regulations. but yet you hear daily from people who want change in a process or whatever. How do the county commissioners work with the legislature to, how do you channel that citizen complaint to the legislature?
Well, we have a lobbyist for one thing, looks out after our interests as best she can. She's very good at what she does. We send people to the legislature to testify on bills. We usually have an intern at the county that helps track legislation. Our staff devotes quite a bit of time for monitoring and judging which legislative issues we want to get in on. I mean, they address 100 things, you know. So I would say that we rely quite a bit on our lobbyists to keep us informed and to weigh in when she needs to weigh in.
Are you required by state law to report financially to the state or the legislature, like legislative auditors?
I'm not a public official. I hope I'm not.
No. Missoula County.
Well, the lobbyist has to register, yeah. And I think there's some element of how many times you go, whether or not you sort of trigger maybe in your job. Depends, I think, on how active you are.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here this evening. I hope this is a successful experiment. I am shocked. I didn't realize before William offered his opening this evening that politics had somehow been involved in establishing the university here. Shocking to me.
Things you read in the newspaper.
I had the luxury of and privilege of serving as Missoula's mayor before the Great Recession, and I continue to have the privilege of that service today. But I can tell you it's a much different job today than it was before 2008. And one of the reasons that we're here this evening, I think, is that before the Great Recession, to a certain degree, we had, again, the luxury of thinking that we could more or less roll along doing largely what we had always done pretty successfully and pretty well and do just fine. But when the mill closes and 417 jobs disappear overnight, and when a downtown iconic department store closes, the folks we serve collectively start to wonder, what are you doing about it? Who's paying attention? What are you going to do about it? And we began, I think, not just at City Hall, but at Missoula County, at the University of Montana, and in the community to think about ways that we could move beyond those luxurious days of going it on our own and how we could work together. There are communities around the United States, there are communities in the state of Montana who have recognized that by working together, they can accomplish much more than they can accomplish on their own. That requires a number of things. One is finding those things that we have in common in our communities, and there are many more things that bring us together than that divide us, despite some of what we may instinctually feel some days. And there are many opportunities that we have to take advantage of our collective strength. One of the things that we elected to do in response to mills closing and department stores closing and folks talking to us about our inability to provide affordable housing and decent wages is we elected to take the notion of economic development, job creation, business retention, and development into our own hands. And we, as a city, in this Missoula County and as the University of Montana, agreed to be partners in the public realm with lots of other partners in the private realm to do just that, to figure out ways to ensure that Missoula is a great place to do business, that folks within and without recognize that we're a great place to do business, that we have lots to offer, we have a fantastic workforce, a terrific research institution that's a part of the University of Montana, good old-fashioned Western work ethic, a love of our place, and faith in our people. All of those things, I think, are combining in the Missoula Economic Partnership and in lots of the activities that sort of come from that collaboration. I think there's much more to come, but the notion that we're in this together, we need to work together, is powerful. For me, it's been a source of strength. The notion that more than ever, I have partners in the community beyond the walls of City Hall. Pretty fantastic. The folks here on this stage, the folks who we serve with, Missoula City Council, other commissioners, the fine folks at the University of Montana, our collective staffs, are all at it every day. I think trying to make our community a better place. And when you start with a great place, that ain't bad.
John, you talked about the point where things switched from being routine to not being routine. When Macy's closed, I think a lot of people suddenly began to worry in a way that they hadn't before. What's the role of the mayor in being out as a public, not cheerleader necessarily, but a champion of the community to help people gather together and get past that, versus a person who stays more in the office and works on the administration? How do you balance those two roles?
I didn't know there would be questions tonight. So it's interesting, William, the fact of the matter is that I am a professional optimist, and I often tell people as mayor, you can be skeptical, but you may not be cynical, because the day that you're cynical, the day is the day you should no longer serve as mayor in your community. And I am an optimist, so in the face of adversity, my job is to find opportunity and to work with people to look for the bright side. Sometimes it's really difficult to find, and sometimes it's not readily apparent. And in the case of Macy's, for example, that in the wake of the mill closure was just a double whammy. It was really tough for folks. And my response to that was, we're on it. We need to start having conversations with folks who want to look at that building, who want to continue to invest in downtown Missoula. And one of the things that I will suggest is that we have, during the salad days, we weren't just resting on our laurels. We were creating the sort of infrastructure and the plans that I think are seeing us through today. For example, we have a downtown master plan that was in place before the recession, and that downtown master plan tells investors that we know what we're doing, that we are committed to our community, that we have a sense of place, and that if you choose to invest here, we'll take you seriously and help you. And I think that's one of the reasons that Octagon bought the old Macy's building. I just had a conversation today with the owners of the building, along with some folks from the University of Montana, who have an organization that will be, I think, if all things work out, a proud tenant there, a tenant we can all be proud of, and we'll start to see that building come back to life in new and pretty meaningful ways. We worked almost immediately together in the wake of the mill closure to talk to folks at the state, to really understand the circumstances of A, why did the mill close, B, what are the opportunities in light of that, and the net result was not immediate, but folks started to understand at least that we were paying attention and trying to come to some solution. We discovered a number of things about that closure, about those circumstances. And one of the, I think, important lessons that we learned, and one of that we're applying through the economic partnership, is that we're no longer going to wait for a fantastic employer in our community to button up. we're going to know that they're having difficulties or issues in advance of that, and whenever appropriate and possible, we're going to do our best to ensure that they don't have to close their doors for reasons that could be prevented.
We'll talk more about economics later as well. President Engstrom.
Thank you, William. Good evening. John, Bill, thanks for doing this together. This is a great idea, and I hope that it's something that we continue. I have to open my comments with congratulating the men's basketball team on their terrific performance. They had a terrific season. They played hard today, and I was hoping in the worst way that they could beat the Badgers, because I have a connection back to the Badgers, and so it would have been a great win. Those young men have been such great ambassadors for not only the university, but the community of Missoula as well. When you think of people from the community that have participated in watching those ball games during the course of this fall, the economic impact of hosting that tournament here a few days ago, and the national television visibility that they have today and last week as well, it really helped to put Missoula and the University of Montana on the map. It was a wonderful thing to see. But I want to just make a comment that they're not the only national champions in our student body. I want to just give you a few examples of some recent things that have happened on the part of our students, students who aren't student athletes in this case. I just learned today, for example, third-year pharmacy student, Stacy Pascal, won the national competition in whatever pharmacists do to compete. Not too long ago, Ben Murphy, one of our music students, won the national composition competition, where he wrote the award-winning musical competition, or musical composition, one that I hope we can hear at some event coming up at the university before too long. Last year's student body president, Ashley Williams, won the university's first Mitchell Scholarship not too long ago, which will send her to the country of Ireland to serve really as an ambassador again for the United States and for the University of Montana and for the community of Missoula. So we have national champions all across the student body. I'm very proud. We have recently completed a new strategic plan at the university called Building the University for the Global Century, trying to focus on those characteristics of today's world that we must address in the education that we do and the research and the outreach that we do. That strategic plan has a number of core values to it, one of which is the word engagement, and we mean that in terms of engagement with the community. I'm proud that our faculty have just finished a survey that shows that our faculty members here are well above average in the involvement in their community. I think that speaks well of both the university, but also the receptivity of the community and the kind of partnerships that we're talking about here today. So I think going forward, we'll see even greater interaction between the community and John and Bill. I know that our students and our faculty will be out there working with your organizations, with the businesses in town, and so on. To me, one of the examples that really exemplifies the kind of community interaction that we want to see is what's going on right across the river in our Montech incubator facility with this company, Rivertop Renewables. And I want to illustrate the importance of that with two student examples. A few years ago, a young man named Tyler Smith came to Montana, to the University of Montana, from, I think it was Mississippi. But he came here to do his graduate studies in chemistry. He earned his PhD in chemistry, and rather than leaving the state to go practice chemistry in some other place, he is now a senior research chemist at Rivertop Renewables over here, helping to move new products to market, helping to employ other people, and really putting his PhD to education to work right here in Missoula. Another young man, Eric Johnston, is a lifelong resident of Missoula. He just graduated last year from the university with an undergraduate degree in chemistry in this case. Prior to Rivertop being here, the chances of Eric finding a job as a chemist in Missoula were very small. Well, he's employed right across the street now in Rivertop Renewables, again, as a chemist, putting his education to work right here in Missoula. That would not have happened were it not for the partnership between the university and our community in so many ways, at so many levels. So I'm very proud of that example. I think we all can be proud of that example. It's the kind of thing that we need to continue to do more of. So, thank you.
Royce, as you've traveled Montana in your new role as president, from Eagle Eye to Eureka and Wisdom to Wolf Point, what has surprised you about what people know or don't know about UM?
Well, you know, the biggest surprise is really quite a pleasant one, and that is the outpouring of support on the part of people around the state for the university. People who have gotten their education here are so grateful for the education they got and the time they were able to spend in Missoula. And so it's been a nice surprise to see and to talk to so many people who feel that they owe their success, their lifestyle, the quality of life that they have to the education that they receive. I think people view the University of Montana as a top-rate research institution that provides a fantastic education at all degree levels, and they're so grateful for that. On the other hand, it's difficult for information to travel reliably and promptly around the state. And so there are always questions and, in some cases, some misperceptions about what goes on at the university, how the university is funded, what can be done with the different kinds of money that the university operates with. And so we always try to talk about the finances of the university as much as we can and give people a clear understanding of how much of that money transfers back to the community, to either here in Missoula or around the state.
I don't see a stack of question cards. You're not helping me out. Please, if you do have questions, write them down, send them to the ends, and work on those as well. We'll open up the mics in just a little bit. I would like to, if you look in this document, in these 12 points of collaboration, the first 3 or 4 are about the economic partnership and the planning that's gone into infrastructure development. As I read it, you're dedicated to ensuring that existing businesses have the opportunity to expand and stay in business, expansion and retention. That you want to attract new businesses that fit in with our existing infrastructure, what we have here already, the workforce, the settings for business. And then you have the new entrepreneurial approach to bring people in that are based on research done at the university, or trying to match entrepreneurs with people with ideas. So I have a couple of questions. One for the university, which deals with how research becomes a commercial entity, and how the university makes sure that the public's investment in that is honored and that we benefit as well as the commercial entity. And for you two gentlemen, as far as the development of the new entrepreneurial pieces, there's some risk in that, I would assume. And how do you balance public funds in that risk to attract entrepreneurs and new commercial business? So whoever would like to go first.
I can start on the research part of it. research, and I'll add creative scholarship to that because it's more than just scientific research here at this university, but it's a breadth of scholarship that covers all of the academic disciplines and many interdisciplinary areas on our campus as well. Our research plays several really crucial functions for us. One, it's an industry in its own right. If you think of the externally funded research that goes on at this university, we do between $65 and $70 million of externally funded research every year. The majority of that money comes from the federal research agencies like the National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, and so on. And of that $70 million or so dollars a year, about 65 to 70% of that is spent directly on wages. So people right here in the community are paid off of that, off of those research dollars. Much of the remainder of those dollars also gets spent here on local supplies and things like that. Certainly in some cases it's spent on scientific equipment and things that are purchased outside of the state. But probably 3/4 of that research money is spent pretty darn local. And so it's an industry in its own right that benefits Missoula. That's one real role of research. A second role of research is to improve quality of life for all of us, whether that means citizens here in Missoula, in the state, or around the country. The research that's done, for example, in the College of Health Professions and Biomedical Sciences is aimed at discovering new drugs to treat neural disorders, for example. That's a benefit to all of our quality of life. So that's another important role of research. A third role of research, and one that frankly we're really just getting up and running, is a little bit what I was talking about earlier, the transfer of ideas or products from the university to the private sector. Again, Rivertop being a good example of that. And that's what we all really hope happens in the long run, is those kinds of transfers, technology transfer that generates new companies, small companies, but jobs for people, jobs for college graduates. And finally, research is in its own right a great educational tool. As a student, quite a few years ago, I participated in research as an undergraduate. We try to do that as much as we can on campus. And working side by side with a small group or side by side with a faculty mentor, that's a great education. It's the best kind of education that you can get. So research plays a breadth of roles important to our university and to our community.
Sure. So with regard to entrepreneurship and the risks and rewards, what the city of Missoula County, and the University of Montana have done is make an investment in human beings who have the talent to connect the dots. Economic development is largely about putting people together, making sure that folks know what resources are available to them from soup to nuts. And there are many. I am not an entrepreneur. I was in small business. That doesn't make me an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs tend to take more risks than I would have taken as a small business person. They tend to be innovators, they tend to have ideas, and they're more than likely to need money. And chances are they need someone else's money to make their deal work, and occasionally they're going to fail. So I don't think any of us up here are in the business of directly bootstrapping entrepreneurs, but we are in the business of making sure that those entrepreneurs have the resources and infrastructure in the community to do what they need to do. So there's an example sitting in the front of the hall here. My friend Alex Hilton is a product of the University of Montana. He's got a PhD, which he's got a PhD in something I can't even pronounce. It's pretty impressive. But what Alex has done is he's built a few companies out of stuff that started in his basement with his brain. And when Alex ran out of the funding mechanism that a lot of entrepreneurs understand, which is called the triple F, friends, families, and fools, when that money's gone, you need to go to the next step. And often a bank can't get there. But there are lots of resources, and that's where local, state, and federal programs can come into play, and that's where some private equity can come into play, angel investors and later venture capitalists. So what we've done together is bring together folks who can bring those programs to bear on really creative people with really great ideas who may or may not fail.
The county plays a very similar role, I think. There's something called community development block grant programs, funding and so on. They can be grants, they can be loans. Often we get an application to that that's been vetted by the staff thoroughly. So I really feel like we're very prudent with which entrepreneurs we're going to kind of nudge forward however we can. The state has various programs that will help people kind of line up and know how to apply for certain funds. But you know, it's pretty rough out there. And entrepreneurs, we have a guy who wants to build a state-of-the-art film studio in our development park. Well, we don't have any money for him, but we can help him prepare for some money from the state if that works out. So we do what we can, but there's some of it that we can do for entrepreneurs.
Do you think that this new Missoula economic partnership is an effective approach so that you all know what the other ones are doing? And before that partnership, did you have a good idea of what everyone was doing? I mean, did you know what kind of research was going on campus, and to the extent that you do that?
No, though I'm not necessarily sure that the partnership is going to be the delivery mechanism for that kind of information. I think what the partnership has begun to do is, again, sort of, you need a single point of entry for folks who want to do business here. I think entrepreneurs, small business folks, large companies aren't necessarily concerned with who's delivering what to them, provided that they know what's available for delivery. And that's what the partnership is all about, is providing that information and those resources, and often connecting business people to one another so that they can grow and prosper and do well.
I would just follow up on that. I think the partnership, its principal contribution is the networking side of things, bringing people together. When you think of entrepreneurs, many of them have great ideas, but not necessarily the people who are going to turn those ideas into viable business. And so having a network of people who can talk back and forth and say, hey, here's a business person who might be able to help you with your laboratory idea and bring it out to the private sector. I think that networking is going to be a really valuable contribution. And certainly that was there before, but on a less formalized level. Maybe I think the partnership is really going to take that networking to a much higher level, one that will pay off for us in the long run.
And the very fact that we're talking about this has spurred a lot of interest. So I'll give you a quick example. This morning we have a remarkably energetic young councilwoman, Caitlin Cockrell, who introduced me to a mobile entrepreneur, a software engineer for Twitter, who lives here in Missoula, Montana because he can, and whose office on any given day might be Break Espresso. And our conversation was about how do we find more of you, and how do we train a workforce here to do the kind of work that you're doing, so that we have value for a company like Twitter that seems to be doing pretty well today. So our conversation today was, let's have a conversation with the University of Montana about the computer science program and what specifically a company like yours might be interested in terms of students. Their biggest need is quality employees. And frankly, they're not finding them in the heart of Silicon Valley today. And if we can have some part in creating, I think that's a winner for everybody. We wouldn't have known that if we hadn't started talking about economic development as much as we do.
Good job. Thank you. Microphones are here and here, and if you want to queue up there and ask a question, please do so. I'll start with this question. Montana was in the news by earning an F as a state for transparency in funding and spending, 49th out of 50. There's no attribution to where this statement comes from, but what are the safeguards to address this issue, and what can we afford without getting into California-style budget wars?
Well, I can start with what I believe is the city of Missoula's fairly remarkably transparent financial condition. We just did a review with City Council yesterday of our financial condition, which by the way is good. We have I think as much information about our budget, our expenditures, and our revenues as anyone might be interested in. Those are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on the worldwide internet. And we're also audited. Those audit reports are on the record and available for anyone to look at. I'm happy to answer any budget questions that anyone might have. And the Missoula City Council and the citizens we serve are pretty particular about the way we do business. And typically, if we stray from some of those particulars, we do our best to correct them.
The county strives mightily to abide by the open meetings law here in Montana. County government, you send out notices of agendas a couple days in advance. I don't really see how we can be more transparent, but I'm willing to entertain some ideas.
One of the mechanisms that we started at the university to increase communication in the general sense, and budget certainly falls under this, is a new university council where it involves representatives from the student body, the faculty, the administration, and the community. So we have members of the community as a formal part of the university council. The meetings are open, they're every other week, and part of that agenda every time is what we call University 101, where we have a 20, 30-minute presentation on some aspect of the university just for educational purposes for people at the university and outside of the university. So a couple of times during this past fall, or during the past year, that University 101 has focused on the budget of the university and trying to be as clear about that as we can. You know, having said that, the budget of the university is a pretty complex animal, and it's not easy to understand. Even when you have all of the information in front of you, there are so many parts, so many revenue sources, expenditure categories. And it does take a fair amount of effort to really understand the budget. But again, like these two gentlemen, anytime anybody would want to talk about the budget on a one-on-one basis or with some of our budget personnel, would be happy to do that.
Yes.
This question is directed at Mayor Engen, although the other two leaders are certainly welcome to chime in with their own views on it. Around the U.S., hundreds of local communities, dismayed by the growing power of corporations to determine the destiny of their communities, have been passing local bills of rights and responsibilities stating that the communities should be able to control their own destiny, and in order to do that, in order to care for the systems and resources that they depend on, they must have some control over those systems and resources. And they've been using these bills of rights and associated ordinances to ban things like corporate farms and fracking and dumping of sewage sludge and other things they feel would harm their communities. So Mayor Engen, would you support a local bill of rights and responsibilities that requires that the water we drink here in Missoula be under the care and control of the people of Missoula, and that a legal fiction known as a corporation cannot own our water system but must sell that system to the city? Why or why not?
I might have to have you email that to me, Vicki. My sense is probably yes. And to a certain degree, I think there's value in those statements. I think there's more value in agreements and contractual relationships. And we worked pretty hard during the sale of Mountain Water to Carlisle to get an agreement that I hope does more than that. Because some of that I'm not sure, while we may pass it, I'm not sure how much of it's legally defensible. You can sort of feel Jim Nugent cringing somewhere in the city today. But certainly the spirit of that, the notion that we ought to control our water destiny here in Missoula, that water is a public resource. I'm there all day. And I believe that in the relatively near future, that we will realize public ownership of our water utility.
I hope so.
I also want to mention that there is a microphone available at the very top, should you not be able to get down to I have 3 questions. I did? Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, thank you for doing this. This is a wonderful idea. I'm interested in your thoughts on the role of the arts in a community, not only as a commercial growth sector, but also how it addresses the heart and soul of the community. If you would address that issue for me. Thank you.
I'm opposed to the arts, Carey.
Thank you, Mayor.
Missoula wouldn't be Missoula without the arts, and there are clear economic benefits to that, but not everything we do has to be about dollars and cents. Sometimes what this is about is feeding the soul, and if we were a soulless place, it wouldn't matter how many of us were gainfully employed. We would be poor in many other ways. We're blessed with a remarkable arts community and fantastic culture, and I think it's invaluable.
I agree. I was just telling this gentleman earlier that one of the most fun things I've done in Missoula is to be part of the cast of Paint Your Wagon production by the community theater. And that was the most remarkable, educational, enjoyable experiences I've had. And it's true, you can't quantify that, but you perform, and after the show's over, you've got a feeling in your heart and soul that has transformed you to some extent. So I think we have to pay more attention to the arts, particularly in lower levels of grade school and so on, middle school than we do now.
What role did you play?
I was one of the minors. I had a little dance act I did beforehand. Yeah. So, and then he worked in some sort of twirling thing that I did. So it was a blast. I mean, you get to know a whole bunch of people you didn't know otherwise. It was wonderful.
Greg, I agree. I think so much of the spirit of who we are in Missoula is related to the arts and creative expression. You think of all the wonderful events that take place on this campus, the partnership that we have with the Missoula Symphony that occurs on the campus with members of the community, the arts environment downtown. This is a very special place. I think it's a rare community that has the vibrancy that we have here in Missoula, especially for a community of our size. This is a very special place, and I think you can see that because there are so many people who want to stay here in Missoula and practice their art, whether that be writers, or musicians, or other types of artists. I think it's just a wonderful community in that regard. It's just a part of the fabric of who we are in Missoula.
I played the wagon.
I'm Paul Morgan. Some of you may know me from my city council, and this isn't about this. Some people compartmentalize things. I don't compartmentalize things, so I can't. It's very difficult for me, but Mayor Engstrom, our Mayor Engen and President Engstrom. I've had some issues with some of the things as far as the finances, and it has to do mostly with getting the word out as to what's going on behind the scenes. As far as the budget goes, you know, sometimes people say I'm making a statement. These aren't statements. They're questions. Mountain Line has a 100% capital funds. It's subsidized 100% by federal monies for the capital funds, and the operating expenses are about $4 million, and the fares come to about $500,000. What happens when those federal funds dry up? And then the other question for President Engstrom is that when we've had talk about sexual assaults and discrimination, and I had some experience with discrimination at the university, coming back as an adult student, and I mentioned that at a city council meeting, and nobody called to question me. Whether I was discriminated or not, that's not the issue. Nobody called to ask. And in my time as an adult student, having been a teacher, and having been in other situations where I see people discriminated against, the response is the same. And the response generally is the people that have the power to do something about it, if they're not too high up the chain, they tend to ignore it as long as possible. If you go above them, it's like a threat to somebody.
So what question would you like to ask them?
The question is that if you're going to have a budget that's open, then the statements that are on the computer, they're there, but you can't copy them, you can't put them together, you can't organize them in any way or shape or form to compare what's going on in one area to another. The account numbers are separated, and you know, you get the budgets even meeting by meeting, and the total budgets. The total budgets are very, very difficult to determine for the whole year. And then this last summer we had 18.
So what is the question then?
Well,
with all these concerns, what do you want to ask these gentlemen that will?
The question is that we have a newspaper that seems to tell one side of the story. It doesn't tell the background information. It doesn't tell us about the stadium. The city has the rights to it 4 days a year, and no other rights to it. No income comes from the stadium. We had $18 million added to the budget
Sir,
last
are you going
summer.
to ask a question?
As soon as I'm finished.
Okay.
We had
Would you get to the question, please?
Okay, we had $18 million added to the budget last summer. It didn't make a blip in the Missoula, and I still don't understand where it came from. The MRA was $4.5 million added to it. I just read there was nothing in our newspaper about the MRA having liabilities. I think it was $7 or $9 million in the last audit in June, and then there's no news in the paper as to where that's coming from, why that is. And I guess my question is what happens to the people that are employed by Mountain Line and are subsisting on the federal dollars? And as far as the university goes, how can the university open up complaints about discrimination just by talking about them, not forcing somebody to put their lives on the line or hang somebody else in the process?
Thank you. So I don't pretend to be an expert in Mountain Line finance. It's another taxing jurisdiction. But what I do know is that the combination of funding sources appear relatively stable today. And like any other organization that depends on any revenue stream, if that revenue stream goes away, unless it's replaced, services go away. So Mountain Line needs money to run, and if there isn't money there, chances are it's not going to run.
I'll try to address the question about discrimination at the university. You know, we're a community of 15,000 people, 2,000 more employees, give or take. it's the real world. There are going to be problems, there are going to be conflicts, and there are going to be misunderstandings among people whenever you get that many people in one place, in one community. So it's incumbent upon us to do the best we can to address issues of discrimination or any other kind of misbehavior when it happens. And so we do have mechanisms in place at the university to do that. Do they operate perfectly? Probably not. Can we improve? Absolutely. But we do have an equal opportunity officer whose job it is 24 hours a day. The job it is to hear and address concerns, complaints about discrimination. And most of the time it works. Most of the time it helps. We have an annual day of dialogue that focuses specifically on issues of difference, issues of diversity, and issues related to discrimination in hopes of using education as the most powerful tool we have as a university to combat things like discrimination and other not so positive elements of our society. And so we work hard at education, we work hard at having the structures in place to address problems when they do occur. And I think by and large we do a pretty darn good job of that. Not every case turns out to the satisfaction of the people involved. There's no question about that. And that's, I think, a part of life, and again, in a community of our size.
I have 3 cards here that address the issue of sexual assault, and I'd like to combine them into one question. One of them says, what is the city of UM doing to address the climate of sexual assault? Another one asks, again, what are you going to do to fix this problem? But this question is more in the spirit of tonight, I think, which is about working together to go forward. The past 2 years have seen several instances of violence downtown, groups of thugs attacking people who they believe are gay or lesbian. Now we see a pattern of violence against women on the campus of the university. Do you believe that there is an atmosphere of violence in this community against women, gays, or lesbians, or people of color? And if so, how are we dealing with this problem as a united community?
I can start. I believe there are aberrations. I believe that most Missoulians wake up every day with a love of life and respect for the folks they live with in this community. I know that there are thugs, there are violent people. I work with better than 100 folks who are largely responsible with others for ensuring the safety of our citizens. It is imperfect. It is sometimes frustrating. It is, in the incidences of assault, sexual assault, violent assault, murder, drunk driving, vehicular homicide. At the bottom of all of that is human suffering. And one of the most solemn pieces of work I do every day is to acknowledge that I have a responsibility, along with the many people I work with, to temper human suffering. And we're not always successful. And we don't control as much as we'd like to control. And we can't fix as much as we'd like to fix. All that said, we're trying to get better every day. I don't think there is a general atmosphere of violence in Missoula. I think there are occasions. I think they happen more often than they should. I think a number have happened recently, have been remarkably well publicized, and have caused us to think about the way we do business. So with regard to sexual assault in particular, one of the things that we're doing today, working with the University of Montana and working with the many advocates who work around the issue, the complex issue of sexual assault, is figuring out a way, for folks who are in need, folks who are suffering, folks who are victims of sexual assault, to have a place to call and know that they're going to get help. And that help can range from a simple acknowledgement that it happened and whatever else that person needs at that moment, all the way to, I want to talk to a cop because I want whoever did this to be brought to justice. And there's a huge spectrum. But what we're doing with our It's Your Call 911 program is endeavoring with the university, with the larger community, to let folks know there's a place you can call where you're going to get help. We have to help.
Bill, it's not just an urban Missoula problem.
It's not unusual for some guy to keep his girlfriend and the kids out in the trailer somewhere. I mean, there were times when I used to deliver food to folks in that kind of situation where they're really just sort of stuck away from civilization. And so I think, I couldn't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure that the sheriffs deal quite a bit with not only sexual assault, but just abusive relationships in general.
I agree with John that I would not characterize this as an atmosphere of violence against any particular group of people, but we certainly have elements of that in our community, and we've had more than our share recently. We know that. We know that it's a serious problem. It's a situation that shatters dreams and keeps people from realizing the goals for which they come to this community, to this university. And we have to do everything we can to prevent it. Our jobs are: 1, care for victims; 2, get rid of perpetrators; 3, prevent these things from happening in the first place. How do we do that? Well, I think this is where we really found and are capitalizing upon renewed partnership, if you will, or the next level of partnership. Our 2 greatest weapons are communication and education. And so I think that both on campus and in cooperation with the community, we have embarked upon a much more aggressive educational campaign that does involve 911 and the use of that as essentially a clearinghouse. We also need to recognize, though, that there are many people who don't want to and won't follow that route. And so we need to have other avenues for those people to get the care that they need. And fortunately, we have just an incredibly dedicated group of advocates in this community, both on campus and in the community, who have dedicated their lives to helping victims of abuse. So going forward, we need to do everything we can to increase our educational efforts, make sure that every student that comes to this campus understands what sexual assault is, understands the avenues that they have for reporting sexual assault and the kind of care that they have available, and do the best we can to educate people about the kind of situations that can lead to these unfortunate events. It's a serious issue, but the bright side of this, or the upside of this unfortunate series of events, are level. I think the level of dialogue about sexual assault on the campus and in the community, but certainly on the campus, has gone up pretty dramatically. The students have held their own forums. Even a statewide forum in Butte a couple of weeks ago that was organized and conducted by students from across the Montana University system. The level of reporting of sexual assaults is going up. And so there are some upsides to this. We we learn from. And we'll do a better job as a community in the future with all aspects.
Does that call for me? Nice job.
Gentlemen, thank you for engaging in this dialogue with the community this evening. Appreciate you taking the time. My question for President Engstrom, and as a member of the Missoula Exchange Club, I'm quite concerned about the decision by the University of Montana to eliminate the ushering duties at Grizzly football and basketball games by several of the Missoula area service clubs. While it might not be a lot of money to the size of the budget you folks deal with, the funds we raise ushering at these games is one of our major fundraising activities, and it supports one of our major national programs, which is the prevention of child abuse. And here in Missoula, we support the Parenting Place, which helps couples and families take classes to avoid a situation of child abuse here in Missoula, and it's quite successful. This is one of the major projects that these funds go to. And we've had a long-standing relationship with the University of Montana. We started ushering back at Dorn Blazer Field, and have done that for years, and a lot of our members, including myself, are university alums, former and current faculty members, and so we treasure that relationship with the university. But we're concerned about the fact that these duties are being eliminated and we can't seem to get an answer as to why. We enjoy our role up there, especially on the west side at football and basketball games, because we get to seat the visiting team. And as parents and grandparents, we all share in our experiences in watching our kids and grandkids play the game. And we also help the visiting people find a restaurant to go on to commiserate after they get trashed by the Grizzlies. So we do perform a community service there, but we'd like to get an answer to that question, or perhaps set up a meeting so we can discuss this, because this is a major concern to our club, and I'm sure other service clubs in the community.
Yeah, thanks for that comment and that question. I'm not going to be able to answer it in any kind of detail tonight. But I would be more than happy to meet with you and bring together the right group of people on campus to have a discussion about it. I know it has been a long tradition, and I appreciate very much the work that your groups have done, and thank you for the service that you've contributed to the university. My understanding is that this isn't really any kind of a financial decision, but it has more to do with the kind of trained personnel that we need in an environment like Washington Grizzly Stadium on a game day. So the use of volunteers doesn't meet quite the level, the new level, the increased level of training that we require in that kind of a venue now. But I'm going to stop there because I don't know more detail than that, but I'd be certainly willing to talk more with you and get the people together that do know the detail about it. I also understand that there have been discussions about making greater use of service organizations to volunteer in other kinds of events on campus besides Washington Grizzly Stadium events involving the arts, for example. Maybe there's a role there that we can increase as well. But I would be more than happy to talk with you about it.
Question here, and then
Good evening. How can we convince the governor and the legislature to fund a new college of technology?
I'll try that, Brent. Thanks very much for that question. I think, to be honest, the most important thing that you can do is, as citizens who are not part of the university community, contact legislators, contact the governor, contact policymakers in a general sense, and communicate how important this is to the community. This is all about jobs and futures in a way, both in the immediate sense. You know, if we are successful in getting the funding for that, that's a $47 million construction project that will take place over a 2 to 3 year period. It's a whole lot of jobs just to build a building, but in the long run, 2-year education is the most direct connection between education and the workforce that we have available. If you think of the programs that are at the College of Technology, whether the trades programs like welding, construction, diesel mechanics, and so on, or the more academic programs like business technology, computer technology, nursing, and even the Associate of Arts degree is a transfer degree. Those are very direct opportunities, 1 to 2 year opportunities for people to get retooled or to start a career, and very productive career for those folks. And so it is all about jobs and all about futures for people who want to live in Montana. And I think this is just a matter of our policymakers hearing from enough people, both inside, but more importantly, outside of the university system, to say this is important for us and for our community. We needed funding.
What's the city county role in getting that done?
I think we're going to work together to advocate for that. We have relationships with legislators. We have relationships in the governor's office. But moreover, again, this tonight and everything that follows, I think, are opportunities for us to talk about a community agenda. And I think the College of Technology is one of those clear agenda items. And I often talk about this sort of old-fashioned notion I have of a thriving middle class. And when I think about a middle class, I think about folks who have secure jobs and are making enough money so that they don't have to make difficult choices every day between food and shelter or transportation and medicine. And if you're not making those emergent choices every day, you get to make better choices about how you live and engage in your community, how you plug into your kid's school or into your local government or your faith community. The list goes on. College of Technology is I think, directly connected to middle class lifestyle that lets folks do those things. High quality technical education produces high quality jobs. We ought to make that investment as a community, and I think we can make a fairly compelling case for working together.
Is it a priority for the county?
Sure, it's a priority, yeah. And I agree with John and Royce. It's critical to a successful economic environment.
So just as Mayor Frank Higgins in 1893 led a committee to the legislature with the priority of getting the university here, Mayor Engen lead a committee to implement it.
My recollection is he had a trunk full of whiskey as well. I'd be more than happy to do that. Probably work today too. Question up there.
Missoula's just a wonderful, vibrant community, and I really love it. And I want to make sure that that goes forward in time. I'm also really concerned about the growing impacts of climate change and peak oil. I want our community to be resilient in the face of whatever disruptions come from those two things. I actually believe our community is doing a fair amount about this, but I am wanting to know what you all feel is the priority in each of your areas placed on dealing with those issues. What maybe I know lots of things are going on, what to particularly point to, and especially what new directions would you like to go in to meet those challenges for the future?
So certainly for the city of Missoula, we sort of start from a place of picking the low-hanging fruit, and for us, that's within our organization and within our facilities. Our efforts have largely been about energy conservation, to the point that we recently got gone through a process to evaluate all of our systems and understand what we could retrofit, replace, change, and save energy while saving money. And it turns out those things aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they're almost inextricably intertwined. So we went through an energy, a really extensive energy audit, and we're retrofitting our systems today. We're financing those retrofits with the savings, and once those installations, those measures are paid for, those savings go on for us. We'll always continue to look at some of those improvements. In the larger picture, the city of Missoula embarked early on in joining the mayor's climate protection program. I'm a member of that. Mayor Cadis was before me, and that translates on the ground into first we completed an emissions inventory. We know what our carbon footprint is, give or take, in no small part because of the collaboration with the University of Montana. Professor Robin Saha and some pretty fantastic students put that together for us. Now we're working on a response to that. How do we temper those emissions? What's our goal for tempering those emissions, and how do we get there? And we've got a great group of volunteers. We just met with them last week or the week before, as time flies, to talk about their work and next steps. So we're chipping away at that, and my hope is that if we can do those things as a municipality, we'll set a course and provide an example. We're following an example that was established by the University of Montana. So again, you can learn something in this kind of work.
The county participates in something called Missoula in Motion. I don't know if the city has contributes funds to that. That's an effort, and I think a successful one so far, to help people either ride the bus, walk to work, take a bike ride. So, it's a little thing, but it's a step in the right direction.
At the university, this plays out in two ways. Our primary business, of course, is education. And so we have put in place an educational programming around this topic of climate change. We take pride in being one of the first institutions in the country to actually establish an academic program in climate change studies. We have been working recently to put in place a new program that starts at the freshman level and examines the big questions we face as a global society. Certainly energy is one of those big questions. And so first and foremost, I think our responsibility is to do the best job of education about this topic that we can. And it is a complex topic, and so it isn't all just about climate change and how do we minimize energy use and so on. It's about what do we think about the thriving industry that supports a good number of people here in Montana, and that's energy development. So these are not simple answers, and we want to make sure that our students come away with as much knowledge and as much of a balanced approach as we can provide them so that they are in a position to make good, informed decisions about their own lives and their own patterns of behavior and the kinds of policies that they want to advocate for. The second way it plays out at the university is in a way similar to with the city and the county. It's the way we operate at the university. And so I met just a few days ago with our campus sustainability committee to talk about our next steps in operating the university in an energy efficient mode. And the outcome of that discussion was that the biggest bang for the buck that we can make at this present time is actually still in energy conservation, doing a better job of retrofitting some of our buildings, putting better climate control systems in there, and actually having a person whose job it is to monitor on an ongoing basis the climate conditions of our buildings and the energy uses of our buildings. We can save quite a bit of energy, quite a bit of money by doing a better job of controlling the environments within our buildings. A campus infrastructure like ours ranges from brand new buildings like the Native American Center, which is a LEED Platinum building. It's one of the most energy efficient buildings that you can build in today's world. to the very old buildings that have pretty antiquated climate control systems and difficult ventilation systems to work with. And so it's a whole range, and we need to just address those buildings as rapidly as we can, but on a building-by-building basis.
And there are a couple of other really quick, big picture things that are at play that we all participate in. One is community planning. How do we manage our built environment? Where do we tip up buildings? Where do we have people living? Where do we have people doing business? And how do we create those connections to those places, businesses, and where people live and where they recreate and play? So built environment and transportation are two critical pieces. They're bigger picture pieces, and we work on those every day through our planning documents, our daily discussions, and our work at the state and federal level.
I think our bus system in town, between Mountain Lion and the ASUM bus services, are a wonderful testament to people working hard to save energy and minimize pollution and so on by getting as many automobiles and staying at home as they possibly can. I know that in recent months we've had record ridership on the bus system. And again, the interface between Mountain Lion and the ASUM system is really a tremendous thing, and one that I think we can improve further.
Okay, because I don't think our wonderful moderator's question totally encompassed the thoughts of the Missoula people, the university as well as the city community. My question is specifically, President Engstrom, what are you doing to fix the procedures that allowed or even expected the dean to inform the accused in the case of the last sexual assault incident, with the lack of a procedure expecting someone to inform the city police? And procedure aside, doesn't your office have an ethical responsibility to care for the students at the university? And did you and the dean have an ethical responsibility to contact the police?
We very much have an ethical responsibility. I couldn't agree with you more. The thing that I will say to you is that the university was in contact with the police on the very day that the recent sexual assault was reported. The myth out there that we sat on a sexual assault case for a week is absolutely, unequivocally false. The day the sexual assault report came to us, we were in contact with the city. Did we do that as perfectly as we can? No, but we did it. We were in communication on that very day. We followed the letter of the law. We followed our ethical guidance, our conscience, and I believe we did a good job. Can we improve? Absolutely, we can improve, and that's what these discussions are about. I won't claim that we did it perfectly, but I will not let the myth that we sat on a sexual assault for a week go unchallenged. That is simply not true.
I'd like to close this event by thinking about the future. I'd like to ask each one of you, you have 12 points here where you have talked about collaborations. What do you want to happen in the near future? And I want each of you to respond in how your entity that you help administer can help the other person realize that. So each one of you will spend a great deal of time on this. But
that was a story problem I don't quite understand.
I would like you to talk about a future collaboration you'd like to see happen. And then I'd like the president and the commissioner to respond on how they can help the city do that, the county, and how you and the university can help the county, and how you two can help the university. So you go first. Yes, sir. You ask a question, you have to understand. You have to
Quid, beats, pro, and quote. I think part of the beauty of this event is is that we can begin to think about next steps, and the publication you have before you is a statement of what we've done, some of which we've done as individual institutions, some of which we've done together. There are two critical issues that I think we share in common all day long, every day, at the University of Montana, Missoula County, and the City of Missoula. And from Commissioner Carey's days at Missoula Food Bank, when we first became acquainted, he has had an interest in housing. I have an interest in housing, and I know that every September, President Engstrom has an interest in housing, and it becomes pretty acute. Today, give or take, the vacancy rate for rentals in the city of Missoula is something on the order of 4%. For all practical purposes, there's not much to rent. I think that the city of Missoula, with our planning resources, combined with the University of Montana, we ought to embark on a joint planning project to look at what housing for the university and the community looks like in collaboration and cooperation. I have a dream that if we had 1,000 fantastic, livable, high-quality, affordable housing units for students that are in our community, we would transform the rental market. To a certain degree, I think we transform the ownership market. We'd serve a lot of people very well for a long time, and really, I think, break the back of an affordable housing problem for rent and to a certain degree for ownership by working together. There are communities who have engaged in this successfully, and I think we could be the next one.
One thing we don't have here in Missoula that I think we need in terms of housing is a housing cooperative. And for this discussion, I would say a student housing cooperative. And I would love to see some work be done on putting that together, because student housing co-ops have proven over time, there are a number of them, that they stay affordable, they teach home ownership responsibilities, and afford 10, 15 years down the road. So I just think it'd be wonderful to get one going on in the university.
You want me to respond to that, or to talk?
If you have anything to add.
Well, I'll just make a quick comment on that in terms of another opportunity. But I think that has the idea of a cooperative housing venture has a lot of merit. I've asked Vice President for Student Affairs Branch, to think about our housing needs over the next 10-year period. She's in the process of doing that, and so I hope that discussions between us can take place and be a part of that longer-term plan for student housing. I think that's a very important topic. The other area that I was going to say in response to your question is, I really hope that going forward we can build upon the momentum that we have seen in a few of these examples to build companies, build small businesses that can employ college graduates as we go forward. I think the kinds of small businesses, the kinds of high-tech businesses, the kind of entertainment-based businesses that we mentioned that we have somebody interested in that. Those are great kinds of industries and companies for our town, for a town like Missoula. It's the right size, and it fits with the spirit of who we are. And so I would love to see us continue working diligently together to create opportunities for small businesses to nucleate out of the university, around the university, businesses that will create jobs and create opportunities for people and create a quality of life that we can all enjoy.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
Commissioner?
What comes to mind is something called Family Medicine Residency, which the university is working to bring the program to Missoula. The university, as I understand it, will be a sponsor of the program, and most of its work will be centered in Partnership Healthcare. Partnership Healthcare, for those of you who don't know, is a clinic formed to help provide medical medical help to medically indigent. And so if this comes together, I think it represents about 50 really low-paying jobs, eventually a budget, an annual budget of something like $7 million a year. So whatever we can do to help bring that forward, the county will certainly want to help.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Just to add a little more detail to that, it's a wonderful development. The Board of Regents last fall approved putting in place a family medicine residency program that will have medical school graduates come here for a 3-year period to work with any of the healthcare partners in Missoula and Kalispell, by the way. So it will add, once it's up and running, we'll have between 20 and 25 docs training for family medicine. Part of that will be those trainees going out into small communities as well. In the long run, we anticipate something like 70% of those people who do their residency here staying in Montana to practice medicine. What a great development that would be to increase the number of doctors in Montana.
And the Missoula Economic Partnership paying careful attention to that, doing what it can to connect the dots and make sure the resources are in place in that act.
These three men are working to move forward together. Not only their specific institutions of the university and the county and the city, but as a group. And you are part of that group as well, and they want to hear from you. There's a website that's just been created for that purpose, MissoulaCommunity.com. At that website, you'll find this piece of information. You'll also find contact information. I will be sure that the questions that were not gotten to will be posted there, and I will ask that the three of you make an effort to answer those questions that you're not able to get to. They also have office hours. Thank you, President Engstrom. Thank you, Commissioner Carey, and thank you, Mayor Engen.
Thank you.